So we're going to continue now, and we're going to talk about the evolution of sex, or why there is sex. Why is there sex? Well, it feels good, but no, I'm kidding. It is, but why is there sex? First of all, what good is sex, or is there any good in having sex instead of what's called asexual reproduction? Okay? So asexual reproduction, like what most bacteria do, is you have a bacteria and it splits, it reproduces, it grows, it splits into two bacteria, and then those two bacteria split again, and now there's four bacteria, and so on. Okay? So the thing is, when bacteria reproduce, they're identical to each other. They have exactly the same alleles, exactly the same genotypes, okay? No variation. The only variation they get is if when they're reproducing, a mutation happens, and then they'll be starting another clone that's exactly like it's each other. Okay? Now, this is great if the environment that you're living in doesn't change. Because a clone, it's adapted to that environment, and it does very well. And any other mutation that comes along is probably going to be bad. They'll be less well adapted to the environment, and they'll be removed by selection. Okay? And it turns out you can make twice as many offspring this way. And I'll show you how. Now, with sexual reproduction, there's a twofold cost. First of all, you only make half as many. Okay, so with bacteria, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each of these bacteria, let's say they make another bacteria. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. If you're sexual, this is asexual reproduction. If you're sexual, you have 1, 2, 3, 10, that's males, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10 individuals, half of each sex. To make an offspring, you need a male gamete and a female gamete, a sperm and an egg. And so, actually, that's one offspring. That's two offspring. 3 offspring. 4 offspring. And 5 offspring. So, as you can see, you can make twice as many offspring by making clones of yourself, because you don't need anybody else. You don't need gametes, different gametes. You just gain the resources and then use asexual fission. So you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 offspring. With sexual reproduction, you need 1 sperm and 1 egg. That means you need 1 sperm from the male and 1 egg from the female. That gives you 1 offspring. So you only end up with 5. Okay. So With asexual reproduction, you can produce many, many, many more offspring. That means, in terms of selection and evolution by natural selection should favor asexual reproduction, where you're making clones of yourself. Okay. So in the end, after all these generation now, with sexual reproduction, of course, it doesn't work that way. You need a sperm and an egg. So in 5 generations, age 16, you have 16, but with sexual reproduction, you only have the 2. Okay? Also, sexual reproduction, because each individual might have different alleles, those alleles are in the population. In other words, you're going to mix these alleles together. These are different sexes, but they might have different alleles, and so you'll have more alleles to choose from in terms of selection if the environment changes. So asexual, you have to have a high rate of mutation. Each mutation has to happen for each clone or population. With sexual reproduction, all these different alleles, A, B, C, they're recombined during sex into zygotes that end up having all 3 alleles in the population much more quickly. Okay? So then why, in fact, is there sex? Well, in an environment that changes, like I said, with different habitats, spatial heterogeneity, temporal heterogeneity, that's time, and different kinds of habitats that change, and if the environment changes a lot, and you have lots of alleles, you're likely to have some combinations in each environment that work better than others. So you have genetic diversity to choose from. And sexual reproduction can help a population eliminate what are called detrimental or bad alleles. Okay? And it can generate not new beneficial alleles, but combinations of alleles. So rapid genetic change that occurs through sexual recombination can help a population evolve resistance to all kinds of things, including parasites. Cons, it takes a long time. You have to find a mate with sexual reproduction. Parents pass on only 50% of their offspring, whereas if you're a clone, it's like you're making exact copies of yourself, like an identical twin. And gene combinations that have benefited a parent in an unchanging environment are not broken apart. Okay, so we're now going from what's called natural selection to what's called sexual selection. Now, in natural selection, it usually has to do with survival. Okay? Survival between one in the life cycle of an organism to another. Okay. In sexual selection, is finding mates and having sex. Okay? So, in other words, if, let's say you're a male, and if you're a male, if you manage to impregnate lots of females, I'm not talking about good or bad here, just lots of females, you're going to have lots of offspring. Okay? It's not about survival, it's about having offspring and finding mates. Okay. So, why does sexual selection exist? And why does Arnold Schwarzenegger and a male toadfish have in common? Okay. They're both big and ugly, but there's something else. They both produce small sperm. Sperm, males of humans, when they ejaculate anywhere between 200 million and 300 million sperm. Lots of sperm. Sperm are really little, and they're much cheaper to make than eggs because they're much larger. So females, the eggs are much larger. They can't make as many. So this asymmetry, so here's a small sperm, right? And here's a very large egg. You can only make a few of these. You can make hundreds of millions of these. So when you have two different sized gametes, it's called anisogamy. Males produce different sized gametes. There's a asymmetry, a difference in gamete size, creates an automatic conflict between the reproductive strategies of the sexes. In other words, if you're a female, your strategy, you can only produce a few large eggs. You want to get the best male with the best genes to have sex with and have offspring with. With males, sperm are so cheap, the more females you can have sex with, the better. You'll generate a lot more offspring. So female reproductive success is limited by the resources that can be invested in the few large eggs. Okay? And okay, so female reproductive success, look at females, they're limited by the number of eggs they can have. Actually, let's go here. Okay. And the most successful can make, let's say in terms of humans, let's say rarely do females have more than 10 or 15 offspring. And then very few of them actually survive until adulthood in the past. Males, on the other hand, most males are going to be losers. So there's a lot of males that have very few offspring, okay? Very few that actually, but there are a few that have lots and lots of offspring, okay? So because of small, inexpensive sperm, a male's reproductive success is typically limited by the number of females he can mate with, the more offspring. So variation in mating success is greater in males. In other words, there's going to be lots of males that have very few offspring, and many males that have there's going to be lots of males that have very few, and only a few males have very many. Now, this is all based on reproductive investment. Now, in humans, females, of course, produce larger eggs, they're pregnant, and then they produce milk, which is very expensive to feed the offspring. Okay. But males also, it turns out, provide a lot of resources to females and offspring. And so we have a very strange mating system called monogamy, which we'll get into later. And so, in this case, with humans, unlike most other, let's say, mammals and other animals, in most other animals, most male, also in plants and stuff, males have a much higher chance of reproductive success with many different females, whereas females are limited by the number of eggs they produce. Okay. So there's two different kinds of sexual selection, and this concerns male reproductive success and how males compete against each other. Since females are expensive and produce only a few eggs, those eggs are expensive, and males are going to compete against themselves for access to only those few female eggs. Females cannot produce that many offspring. So, males can compete against each other. It's called intersexual competition, where a male and a male fight each other. And another male, bang, bang, bang. That's called male-male competition. Or males want to be chosen by the female to mate with. And, of course, one of the best ways is you have very showy males, like this bird of paradise. This is a male. This is a female. The female chooses. The male goes and makes a big display. If that meets the female's requirements, then all is good and they mate. Okay? Males that don't have all this showy plumage within the species are the ones that don't get to mate. Only the showiest males. And to make this kind of plumage, it's expensive. It's expensive in terms of resources. Also, it makes you, as an individual, much more detectable by a predator. And you can't fly as well. So, if you survive long enough to make this big, beautiful, all these beautiful feathers, and a female likes that, then you get to mate. If you make all these big, beautiful feathers, but you're so detectable by a predator and you can't get away, so you have to be able to get away. So if you can't get away, you get eaten, you never get to this stage. So only this male who survived long enough with this big plumage that's expensive to make gets to mate with a female. That's an honest signal. It's called female choice, and it's intersexual selection in that the female chooses the male, male, female, whereas intrasexual selection, males compete against each other. So this is an Irish elk, a male. The females were considerably smaller, like today's elk. The males are considerably bigger than the females. Or sexual dimorphism, here, females are small and not flashy because they're going to be sitting on the eggs and providing resources for the offspring. The males in this species, all they do is provide sperm. That's it. Okay? So there's sexual dimorphism in the plumage that the male has compared to the female. Okay. This oftentimes causes sexual size dimorphism, or sexual dimorphism in general. So these are mandrills, a kind of bamboo. The male is on the left. Males fight a lot. Okay? And the biggest male gets to mate with the female. This female is in heat. She's much smaller. Okay? You can see that she's in heat. The big male gets to mate with a small female. Now, in this case, the male is about the same size body-wise, but it has this big, all these beautiful feathers, right? And again, the female has drab feathers. Okay. And it's female choice. Or the males might display like this and chase each other away. Okay. This is another type of here. This is another type of bird of paradise in New Guinea. It's called a rifle bird. The male is this. And of course the female is this. And the male displays and the female chooses. Now, in this case, the female, in terms of praying mantises, is actually the bigger one. And she oftentimes, when they copulate, she bites his head off. Oh no! And they continue to copulate. And so even though he's dead, his body continues to pump sperm into her and fertilize the eggs. And then these are elephant seals. And then finally, these are anglerfish. The big one is a female. It has this, you can't actually see it here, but it's got this thing that's coming out that other fish try to eat, and it eats it. The males are these guys. They're very small. When they hatch, they grow a little bit, but basically all they are is a big pack of sperm with fins so they can swim to a female. They come to the female and then they embed themselves into the female and live the rest of their lives as an appendage of the female. Okay, so sexual dimorphism, distinct differences in the size or appearance, flashy, not flashy, between sexes, males and females, of an animal, in addition to differences between sexual organisms themselves. Okay? So primary sex traits are only related to sex organs, penises, vaginas, things like that. Secondary sex traits, traits that differ between sexes but are not related directly to fertilization. And they include anything from male antlers, fighting, things like that, plumage, color, compared to the females, which are usually a lot more drab. A lot of females don't actually have antlers. Okay. Here. So this male and female, the female doesn't always have this bright red rump. Okay? Only during estrus. Okay. Now, one thing I do want you to do is I want you to go to the canvas, and you'll see a video on elk, male elk fighting female elk. So now, I want to talk about a few other things. There's a lot of strange things that go on in sex. It turns out plants, many plants are male and female. Okay? They produce sperm, they produce pollen, sperm, and they produce eggs. And the sperm, the pollen fertilizes the eggs, and then seeds are produced. But it's usually the pollen from one female flower that pollinates the eggs of a female on another plant. Okay? But there's also animals that are hermaphrodites too. Hermaphrodite has male and female sex organs, and some of them can self-fertilize. But one of the best known ones is a Nemo. Now, you might remember this from a long time ago, but anyway, Nemo loses his mother and goes in search of her. Well, it turns out clownfish are what are called sequential hermaphrodites. They start out as essentially male but sexless, and then there is a large female and a breeding male, and all these immature males that are all in the same population. If the female dies, like Nemo's mother, the breeding male, Nemo's father, changes and becomes a female. And the next dominant subadult male becomes the breeding male. So this is called sequential, one after another in time, hermaphrodite. Okay. Also, there's something called sexual cannibalism, or actual nuptial gifts. A lot of insect males bring gifts to females. And while the female is eating the gift, the male copulates with her and fertilizes her eggs. Spiders, a lot of spiders and mantises have taken it to the extreme, where the female and the male start to copulate, and then the female bites his head off and eats him. And she usually eats all of them, but while they're copulating, he is still ejaculating sperm into her and fertilizing her eggs. So even though he's not left around afterwards, he's still producing lots of offspring. So survival isn't everything. And then these guys I already talked about.
It's right in that bag.
So please watch our video on Canvas on chapter 12. You'll see elk fighting. Okay. Okay, and also I want you to watch the mannequin video as well, also on Canvas under Slides and Media, chapter 12. Okay. So in terms of sexual selection, if females make only a few big eggs, females should be choosy, males should be willing to mate than a female. It turns out, though, that it doesn't always follow that rule. Sometimes some females, not in humans but other animals, can store sperm. So she can mate with a number of different males, and then I don't know how she decides. It's probably not conscious, obviously. Which sperm fertilize the eggs. So if there are an equal number of males and females in a population, oftentimes there is 50-50, then males compete with each other for mates. This is very important. Males compete. They do it two ways. They either fight each other and drive one male off, or they have traits that make them super attractive to females, and the most attractive male gets to mate with the female. So male fitness is limited by mating success. In other words, then any allele that's associated with a phenotype that is attractive to the female, or a trait that increases the male's winning in male-male competition, should increase in the population. So that's sexual selection suggests that male fitness is limited to how many females he can mate with. He's got lots of sperm to go around. That it's better to mate with as many as possible. If he can fight the other males off, great, or if he's more attractive to the females. Females, though, in this case, because they only make a few eggs and they're larger, and they often are the ones that actually provide parental care. In humans, males and females both provide parental care usually. Females have to be choosy about how they use their eggs. They don't want to have sex with just any male. They want to have sex with the biggest male, or the strongest male, or the prettiest male, because each of those things indicates having better genes. Oh, these are the two videos that I want you to watch. Moonwalk Mannequin, Elk Fighting in River. Okay, now, humans are a little different. In most mammals, females produce the offspring, they're pregnant, the offspring are born, the females produce milk, that's expensive, the females feed the offspring, and then finally, and protect the offspring, and then finally the offspring are off on their own. The males have almost nothing to do with it except for impregnating the females. Okay. Now, if the males in a mammal usually the males are bigger. In humans, the males are bigger, but not by that much. Compared to a gorilla, gorillas are about 2.5 times, the males are 2.5 times as large as the females. Okay? Because the big gorillas, the big males have to fight each other, and the biggest one drives the others off. And then has a harem, like the elk. Okay? So, but in humans, males are bigger, but it turns out males also provide lots of parental care and resources. So there's intrasexual competition, but it's actually males not only fight each other, females also, if you notice, get jealous as well. Okay? And then there's mate choice. Males and females both choose their partners. A male just doesn't come along display, and the female says, "Oh, I like you." He also has to like the female. They're both going to provide parental care. There's also a multitude of mating systems. I know that we're most familiar with monogamy. We think that's normal. But actually, in a lot of different countries, males have a harem. Especially if there's, like in the old days with kingdoms, the king usually had a large harem and had lots of wives or lots of females to impregnate lots of children. Poor males or smaller males, oftentimes they might have had one wife if they were lucky. Okay. Also, there are a few instances where one female will have two men as husbands. This happened in the high elevation sites in the Himalayas among the Sherpa. It's starting to die out. And then there's what's called a promiscuous mating system, like what chimpanzees have, where the males are bigger than the females, certainly, but not one male cannot dominate all the females and drive all the others away. The males actually have to form alliances, and the strongest alliance, the alpha male gets to mate with all the females first, but other males mate with the females as well. And humans also have promiscuous mating systems. If you think about dating, the bar scene and all that. Another thing that's going on, most females and animals go through a period of estrus only once a year. That means they enter estrus, they're fertile, they're ovulating, they have sex, they usually are, they actually advertise it. If we go back, let's see here, where am I? Okay, now, females have certain sexual characteristics like breasts and things like that, less body hair, and their voices are higher and sweeter in general. They're not so harsh. So females are smaller. The thing is, they're continuously receptive. In other words, they ovulate once a month all year round, instead of just coming into estrus at one time of the year. Okay? Why does that? Well, it might be to keep the males around and not, so the males don't go off and have sex with other females and don't provide for his children. And then males, they have a V-shaped torso. They have much more muscle definition from the testosterone. They also have a very low, deep voice. Unlike females, and they're oftentimes hairier than females. And apparently females, well, men like women with like soft voices. A lot of men do. And females oftentimes like men with deep voices. Okay. So human sexual selection is a little different in that females are always receptive to sex. I don't mean that they're always receptive, but they're generally receptive all year round. They ovulate all year round, but just one time a month, unlike other mammals.